Chuggaaconroy, also known as Emil, or his full name, Emiliano Rodolfo Rosales Bioro. I might have butchered that, which is one of the least white-sounding names I've ever heard for someone who is, frankly, pretty damn white. He was born on April 8th, 1990 in Phoenix, Arizona. Growing up, Emil didn't have the best relationship with his father. He left him and his mother at a fairly young age, it would seem, and didn't speak much at all since. For most of his childhood, it was just Emil and his mother. Eventually, he would go on to create a YouTube channel under the alias of Chuggaaconroy, where he would garner the reputation of an innocent, lovable, and kind Nintendo fanboy. Essentially, he was one of the good ones. Not much is known about Emil's early life. He's kept his personal life very private and separate from his online personality throughout the years, only occasionally giving glimpses into it. However, on April 16th, 2024, Emil's arm will be twisted and it is forced to release and expose some of the most personal and uncomfortable details of his life through an 18-page long Google Doc, focusing on his relationships, childhood, fetishes, trauma, and much more, all to clear his name of several online misconduct allegations. I'm telling you right now, this story isn't a very fun one. There aren't any victors in it. Things weren't gained, but some things were lost. By the end of it, nothing more than a simple status quo will be returned. And this story will be water under the bridge, an agreement to let bygones be bygones. And maybe that's how it should be. Maybe I shouldn't even be making this video. But I'd be remiss if I didn't tell this story, as it's important to not only me, but the internet, YouTube, and the cancel culture they've created. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. On July 26th, 2006, Emil created his YouTube channel titled Chuggaaconroy, and on March 26th, 2008, he would upload a video that would change his life forever.
What's going on, guys? This is Chuggaaconroy, and I'm gonna do my first LP ever. This is of one of my favorite games, personally. This is Earthbound.
It wasn't his first video, but it was the first Let's Play video he made, a type of video he would later become known for making. The video was the first part of a Let's Play on Earthbound, also known as Mother 2. It's a fairly niche Nintendo game from the 90s that had gained a cult following online due to websites like Starman.net, which was one of many websites that Emil frequented back then. It was through these various websites, chat rooms, and message boards that Emil would find many online friends, such as Stephen and Mallory, whom he met through the previously mentioned Starman.net. Chuggaaconroy is known for his YouTube career, but he had a presence online long before that. Emil has a fairly large internet footprint and was involved in all sorts of little projects and websites throughout the early 2000s. He made a lot of connections through it, and is probably why his early videos did as well as they did. He already had the support of a lot of people behind him. Of course they were going to watch his videos. Plus, as we'll later see especially, Emil put a lot of effort into these older videos, even if the quality doesn't compare to today. After the success of his first Let's Play, Chugga would continue to create more, slowly improving the quality of them in almost all facets. Honestly, it's almost remarkable to see how simple and humble Chuggaaconroy's beginnings are as a content creator. He was primarily inspired by Proton John, a Let's Player at the time who was probably most well known for his Kaizo Mario videos.
Move faster, Pokey!
For the next 2 years, Chugga's Let's Plays would continue. He primarily focused on Nintendo RPGs, like the aforementioned Mother series, which he would later complete, and other ones like the Mario RPGs and Pokemon, eventually expanding out to other Nintendo franchises too, like Zelda, 3D Mario, and even Pikmin. In 2010, a channel titled TheRunawayGuys, or TRG for short, was created. It was the brainchild of both Chuggaaconroy and Proton John. They'd been talking for a while about wanting to do some collab stuff, and decided to meet up at a convention called MagFest, where they'd record some Let's Plays together. They also invited NintendoCapriSun, a mutual friend of theirs, and a Let's Player as well, who was originally supposed to just be a guest, but ended up being a permanent addition. The thing that set TRG apart from other channels at the time was the fact that it was in person. Most multiplayer Let's Plays were done online back then, so the fact that they were all in person gave it a unique vibe.
I don't care about the dinosaur. Poor Mario!
Can you say I'm racist?
How is that racist? It's a dinosaur!
Dinosaurs are people too, you know.
No, they're not. They're dinosaurs. That's why they're called dinosaurs.
No comment.
Also, the fact that these were just really big names at the time helped the channel out as well. Also, the dynamic they had was just really good. Emil and John very frequently butted heads with each other, where typically Emil would annoy or aggravate John in some way, leading him to get angry and yell, which was pretty funny. And NintendoCapriSun, or Tim, is essentially just a straight man to these two being a lot more laid back and quiet. Honestly, the fact that Tim wasn't always going to be a permanent addition is weird to think about to me, because I just don't feel like the dynamic of John and Emil works quite as well without Tim. In fact, I don't really think any two combinations of these three works as well as just having all three of them. I mean, they could work, but each one would feel really off, just like something was missing. Over the course of the coming years, the Runaway Guys would continue to collaborate and create more Let's Plays. They primarily focused on multiplayer Nintendo games at first, but eventually expanded out into some other stuff, like Little Big Planet and Rayman Legends. They even started doing Let's Plays of single-player games, where one person would play a popular game that they had never played before, and the other two would, commentate and help guide them through it. TRG really did experiment with a lot of interesting Let's Play ideas. I think it's that very aspect about it that kept the channel fresh for so many years. What also kept it fresh were the continuous guests they would bring on. While Tim was originally going to be a guest and became permanent, there were plenty of actual guests that came on the channel. Various Let's Players like Josh Jepson, Luca Jin, Tom Fox, MasaeAnela, Stephen George, and plenty of others. These were all mutual friends of the Runaway Guys and fellow Let's Players themselves, so it only made sense that for some of their Let's Plays they'd throw in a fourth player. They also did tournaments of different games sometimes, which would mass a large number of people to collaborate with as well. Probably the two biggest things TRG is known for doing, outside of Let's Plays, is Throne Controllers and TRG Coliseum. Throne Controllers is a game show hosted mainly by Proton John, with Chuggaaconroy and NintendoCapriSun as co-hosts. They've held it at many different gaming conventions over the years, and it's pretty cool. You answer various gaming-related trivia questions, or compete in different video game challenges to earn points and win prizes. TRG Coliseum is an event held once a year where all the different members of TRG get together and host a 3-day-long live stream charity event to raise money for direct relief. They have a bunch of different segments, all with donation incentives in order to raise as much money as possible. It's a pretty fun event and is always a joy to watch. TRG Coliseum is honestly a big reason why the TRG-averse, if you will, became a thing. Everyone involved at first were either mutual friends that had primarily only talked online, or just complete strangers. But through this little event, they all became a tight-knit community. So that's TRG. Of course, TRG was just a side collab for Emil. A fairly big one, yes, but his focus was still always on his main channel. Now, when people think of Let's Plays, they don't think of much, just a guy playing a video game while commentating it, and trying to be entertaining and funny to varying degrees of success. However, Chuggaaconroy takes it to a whole nother level. The amount of effort put into his Let's Plays is honestly insane. Take, for example, his Pokemon Let's Plays. Most Pokemon Let's Plays aren't even normal Let's Plays of Pokemon anymore. They're primarily Nuzlockes, except for when a new game comes out, then a lot of people play them because they're playing them for the first time. However, in Chuggaaconroy's Pokemon Let's Plays, he plays through the games normally, but goes into extreme detail about the game. These Let's Plays are so in-depth that you could honestly use them as just walkthroughs, but calling them walkthroughs would honestly be a bit of a disservice because they're also genuinely entertaining. Emil's humor definitely isn't up everyone's alley.
I hope you're ready to throw in the knock towel and feel tranquil about yourself.
Oh, jeez.
From the electric charge from my P-Dove. Well, I'm gonna be over the moona.
Oh, jeez.
When I peek at you with my lick-a-tongue. What?
It's very punny and fairly inoffensive. Usually he keeps things pretty lighthearted. However, that doesn't mean Emil's afraid to be more crude or vulgar. Especially in more recent years, Chugga has gotten way looser on swearing and just in general being a bit more outrageous with his humor. Emil is also pretty naive. He was a quiet, sheltered kid, and because of that, doesn't know a lot of, shall we say, sexual things. This leads to a lot of unintentional innuendos and poor word choice on his end.
Why are you restarting? What's up?
Should we do Daisy on hard?
Should we do Daisy on hard?
All of this combines to portray Emil as a kind, naive, and very innocent person. This is in hard contrast to how he'll be depicted later, which I find important to mention. Chuggaaconroy wasn't just another YouTuber, he was different and unique. He didn't follow trends, he stuck to his guns and improved upon what he was good at and essentially created his own little niche. The niche of making really highly researched, well-edited, and produced Let's Plays of popular Nintendo games. And I'll reiterate the amount of work put into just one of these videos. It's just staggering sometimes. I'll go back to Pokemon again. Each Pokemon you catch has their own bios he gives on their strengths and weaknesses as a Pokemon on a playthrough team. He goes over gym leaders with detail and talks about their moves and strategies to beat them. He talks about secrets, modes, all the vents and features, beta content, glitches, almost anything you can think of about the game, he mentions in some way or another. This is the case for all of his modern Let's Plays, which includes quite a lot. I get that this type of content isn't for everyone, but man, you've gotta appreciate the amount of work put into these Let's Plays. Maybe some other YouTubers' videos are more entertaining, or more interesting, they cover more recent topics, and are more modern. However, you've gotta respect this guy because his videos have got hard work, dedication, devotion, and integrity. I'm not sure why you clicked on this video. I'm assuming you're a fan of Chuggaaconroy or TRG, or at the very least interested in them, and more than likely the drama surrounding Emil. And I'll get into that soon enough, but first I have to explain to you why all this matters. Chuggaaconroy isn't the first YouTuber to be cancelled, and he won't be the last. But I would argue he's the first YouTuber to be cancelled, redeem himself, and come out practically unscathed. Well, okay, unscathed is in quotes. Mentally, this definitely did a number to the man, I'm sure. But, like, if you just looked at his YouTube channel, you would have no idea that this happened, or really even TRG for that matter. It would just look like nothing more than a simple hiatus. Also, Chuggaaconroy is like the last YouTuber you would expect to be cancelled, and I know people say that about a lot of YouTubers, but like, in this case it was kind of right. There was more to the story than what met the eyes. Chuggaaconroy has had a large impact on YouTube and the internet. The amount of YouTubers that cite him as a reason for why they started making videos is massive. I mean, hell, you're listening to one right now.
Hey everybody, Euster here for a new LP of Super Mario World.
The videos have since been deleted, but I started this channel by making Let's Play videos. At first, I didn't even have a capture card, I just used my laptop's camera to film the footage. I created this channel when I was in 5th grade. Eventually, I upgraded to using a capture card, I experimented with the different kinds of videos, I improved the quality of my Let's Plays, trying so desperately to reach the same level of detail as Chuggaaconroy. And it never worked out. Let's Plays were far past their prime. However, even in the videos I make today, you can still clearly see inspiration from Emil. In my Super Paper Mario video, I emulate his intro of the levels in the game. My logo takes heavy inspiration from his, just being a letter that changes design to correspond to the video I'm making. It was just such a fun idea, I felt like I had to try it myself. All of this to say, what I'm about to go over shocked me and many others immensely. Chugga wasn't just another YouTuber, he was one of the good ones. So we thought. And the fact that things really didn't need to happen this way just makes it all the worse. Okay, I've been glazing Chuggaaconroy for this entire video so far, but there are good reasons for why he initially got cancelled. There were a lot of allegations against him, and the odds did not seem good at all for the guy. Before we get into his full response to these allegations, we're just gonna roll through them and lay them all out to give the full picture of what Emil did. Because he is not entirely innocent, far from it. He made some serious mistakes, so let's get into those mistakes.
I hope that guy had a sock on, or else that's gonna be really gooey.
Well, I mean, he put 2 feet in the one shoe, so...
2 feet in the one shoe with no socks, yeah, that's gotta be gooey.
Ew.
Our descent into depravity begins on January 16th, 2023, when Lady Emily, also known as Great Cheshire on Twitter, posts this. scrolling through Reddit and seeing dozens of comments calling the popular YouTuber who sexually harassed you for several months last year a wholesome being with only green flags. Upside down smiley face emoji. That's certainly an ominous tweet, to be sure. Several comments on the post were asking who it was, because, I mean, why the hell would you post something like this if you weren't going to say who? A few hours later, Lady Emily would follow up this post with another. Fuck it, just to get it off my chest. Last year, Chuggaaconroy kept trying to get me to initiate erotic foot fetish roleplay with him, while he also had a girlfriend. This included sending shoes to my house under the guise of a gift, only to constantly ask for feet pics afterwards. She precedes these with multiple screenshots and recordings of Discord messages showing just what she stated. Evidently, Emil was very persistent about this feet fetish, and would bring it up in conversations very frequently. She wasn't sure how to navigate around him trying to get her roped into this feet fetish roleplay. She just started ignoring him. Now, I'm not going to read through everything in these DMs because, frankly, it's just pretty weird and cringy. But what she says is very much so true. Emil kept bringing up feet stuff to her and sent her some shoes and started role-playing, which could definitely make Emily feel uncomfortable. I mean, I know it would make me. But there are some things off about it. For one, despite the fact that Lady Emily says she felt uncomfortable with the feet fetish stuff, and I can't say she didn't, however, throughout all the messages shown, Emily never explicitly tells Emil to stop with the foot fetish crap. She says she tried to crack jokes at these messages to lessen the creep vibes, but still, her discomfort is never made entirely clear from her responses to Emil. Also, there's just some things missing from these conversations. There's a screenshot of Chugga expressing how his foot fetish is a sexual thing, but that shoes are also just an interest of his, and that his partner says it's fine to talk about it with his friends, assuming they're okay with it as well. And in another screenshot, it seems they come to an understanding, and Emil continues to do his feet roleplay stuff. It's not until Emily just stops responding to Chugga altogether that I think her discomfort is made clear, and even then, it doesn't seem entirely clear from these messages. It's more like opaque or something. Essentially, while I can't argue that Lady Emily didn't feel uncomfortable or weirded out by these foot-filled messages, the level of discomfort expressed in her tweets versus in the actual DMs are very different. It's understandable how Emil could think she was okay with this stuff to some extent, given what has been shown. People were very shocked by this. It wasn't at all known Chuggaaconroy had a foot fetish, which, while there's nothing inherently wrong with it, is still pretty weird. Combined with the role-playing, it definitely didn't give Emil the best look. I mean, not to step on anyone's toes or anything, but foot fetish roleplay, there's a reason I'm not reading these messages out loud. To an outsider looking in, Emil's messages seem strange yet friendly, which could be interpreted as him attempting to manipulate someone into helping him play out his foot fetishized roleplay. However, to longtime fans of Chuggaaconroy, the way he talks in these DMs seems very normal in the sense that the way he talks in these messages is how he talks in his videos and in public. Honestly, it's kind of shocking how similar they are. For example, this "oh" message he does is just something he actually does sometimes. People also pointed out that Emil does have a touch of the tism. He's on the spectrum and has difficulty reading social cues, which could lead to this misunderstanding, given how indirect Emily was being. It's not an excuse, as some people were making it out to be, but is simply an explanation to the misunderstanding and peculiar behavior. That said, while this was all certainly a revelation, people weren't totally against Emil yet. There was still some more information and evidence needed to totally fault him. Lady Emily said that she wasn't the first person he's done this to, yet nothing to back this up was provided. Simply put, people wanted more. Well, okay, they didn't want more, but you get the idea. Later that same day, Chuggaaconroy would briefly respond and apologize to Lady Emily about what happened, promising to give a more in-depth response after he had collected his thoughts. However, before Chugga posted this, Lady Emily posted another tweet to clear up some of the confusion regarding the timeline of events. These mainly added on to what was said in her original tweets, just giving more examples in a clear order of events and giving us even more weird foot talk. Emil really does just randomly bring it up, and her responses definitely hint to some sort of discomfort to it as well. While they don't outright dismiss the feet fetish stuff, they don't really indulge in it either. I think most people could tell by reading these messages she wasn't super into it. However, there are still some sections of these conversations that just get cut off, and she still never outright tells him to stop or gives any direct form of communication towards her discomfort. Also, she doxed Emil's spouse, saying she's from Scotland, so yeah, that's not very good either. Also, before even these tweets were posted, Lady Emily responded to Emil's initial apology, saying that she doesn't like how Emil frames it as a simple mistake. She states that several women have approached her and talked to her about how Emil has done the same thing to them. Although, these were of course private and so no proof was shown. A few days after this follow-up, having let his wounds heal, Emil would respond in more detail to these new messages and the messages from before. Overall, the apology is pretty good. Emil doesn't try to deflect the blame from himself and takes full responsibility for his actions. He's sorry that he made Emily feel this and admits he shouldn't have continued pestering her and gotten the hint sooner. He admits that he also had these types of conversations with other people, some of these he's still friends with, and some not, so this apology goes for them as well, which gives validity to what Lady Emily previously mentioned about women approaching her and sharing similar stories. Although still, there's no screenshots or context given to these interactions. There are a few things of note. For one, he addresses his girlfriend and how she knew about these messages and was okay with them. It didn't cross any boundaries with their relationship, and thanks her for sticking with him throughout this, as the situation has been difficult and unfair to her. He also reiterates that fitness and footwear are just hobbies of his, and I guess I can't say that's untrue. But still, it is a fetish of yours, and talking about it and role-playing with it still seems like a sexual thing. To, like, literally everyone else? I mean, is it supposed to be fun? I guess so. I don't know. Let's move on. So how did Lady Emily and everyone else take this response? Well, Lady Emily simply did not accept the apology. She once again reiterates how he has done this to other women and doesn't find his response genuine. She does wish for him to genuinely improve and stick by his word, but she also ends her post on a very sour note, stating, "And no, Emil, we didn't have a combo where we settled this privately. I had to have one of your friends talk to you because you kept bothering me and spreading personal info about me, to the point where I didn't feel safe, and said friend had to tell you to leave me alone." There's no validity or proof to either of their claims here, really, and she hadn't mentioned the spreading info part until now, but it still made very clear that Lady Emily was still very pissed at Chuggaaconroy. As it currently stood, neither of these two were particularly saints. Chuggaaconroy was obviously being very weird, cringy, and pushy with his whole foot fetish thing, which didn't put him in a very positive light, and made him a very easy bag to punch and make fun of, which is not what you want when you're trying to prove your innocence. Making women feel uncomfortable is one thing on the internet, but being cringe while doing it as well, I mean, that's just unforgivable. Lady Emily had still done a pretty poor job of communicating, and these other women still hadn't come out until, like, an hour before Lady Emily's response. I know it's out of order, but it works better for the narrative, okay?
Hey, maybe I can get the coin. Oh, wait, I'm buying a star this.
Yeah, that's kind of it. Unless you roll a 1.
I hate you! Why do you do this to me every single time? Every single time you always do this to me, Emil!
Like I just said, a day after Chuggaaconroy's response, MasaeAnela would post a thread on Twitter regarding the allegations against Emil. I previously mentioned MasaeAnela earlier in the video. She was one of the many guests not only on TRG, but also on Chugga's channel. They even did some Let's Plays of Mario Party together on both of their channels. Honestly, out of all the people in TRG, Masae seemed probably the closest to Emil. I mean, they lived very close to each other in Atlanta, Georgia. They also appeared frequently together in vlogs done by Steve and George. It's through a lot of these vlogs that we get to see their interactions with each other. Steve and Amal would visit Emil pretty often, or vice versa, and every time they did, Masae was always there. They did little gift exchanges with each other, and it was all very kind and wholesome stuff. Emil definitely had a very similar dynamic with Masae as he did to John, in that sometimes he would piss her off and she'd get mad at him, but it was always good fun, it seemed. Sometimes Chugga would call things Masae did cute or adorable, which definitely came off as strange, especially since Masae would get mad at him for this. But I don't know, they were still friends, and they had been for years. It was just their dynamic, how they joked and stuff. There was nothing wrong with it, right? Right? Yeah, so apparently not. MasaeAnela's thread featured the following. After the number of people who inquired about Chuggaaconroy over MagFest, I feel I need to make this clear. I have not associated with Emil for years, nor are we friends. Any cameo, Splatoon 2 recorded long before our falling out, or interaction/mention, Coliseum Twitch chat, was posted and done without my consent, after I had made it clear that I did not want to be associated. I am uncomfortable with the way he has talked to/about me in the past, which has been a huge point of distress. Combined with the way he's spoken to/about others, particularly women, in private and public, it is concerning, and I do not want to associate with that behavior. Emil has historically been one to push boundaries, and being faced with a following as large as his is absolutely harrowing. Even establishing my own personal boundaries carries an inherent risk. For a long time, not rocking the boat felt like the safer option. I have seen the recent posts and his apology. I've privately received several from him over the years that have rung hollow with his actions. I'm tired of hearing it. I have no more chances to give, and I am exhausted from pretending/politely dodging topics when he is brought up. For my own comfort and safety, I will not be attending events that he will be at unless it is a public space where I am able to avoid him, large-scale conventions. I have not seen him in years, and I have no intention to start again now. To those who have unknowingly asked me questions about him, either at MagFest, in private, or in chat/comments, I hold absolutely no ill will, and I do not fault you. But moving forward, I will not be reciprocating discussion about Emil further, in any capacity. This is my personal line in the sand, made because I no longer want to quietly tolerate people speaking for me, assuming the wrong things, or incorrectly associating us as friends/collaborators. For those who have also been hurt, I empathize with you, and wish you all strength. I suppose while we're here, I should mention that MasaeAnela's boyfriend, Brett Ultimus, seconded all this in a tweet, just so that that's out of the way. This hurt. Hurt you down to the soul. Up until this point, all we had to go off of was Lady Emily's screenshots and words of her words of other people's words. However, Masae had known Emil for forever. This wasn't some random person who met Emil a year or two ago. This was a longtime friend who cut ties with him for very serious reasons. I and many others assumed that the way Emil talked to Masae was just joking around. People didn't know it was genuinely unwanted and made her uncomfortable. MasaeAnela reinstates basically everything Lady Emily said. From him making women feel uncomfortable, to the pushiness, to the apology, everything here seems exactly like what had happened to Emily. If Emil had been doing stuff like this to one of his closest friends, then there's no doubt he could and would do it to others. Masae didn't need to show proof, because the proof had been there for the past decade. This bombshell really did shatter everyone's opinion of Chuggaaconroy, especially if you were a longtime fan. If you were a fan of TRG, it was easy to dismiss a lot of what Lady Emily said, given her lack of direct communication and lack of evidence of other people's claims against Emil. However, TRG fans trusted Masae practically just as much as they trusted Chugga. If you were to compare the facts and information presented by the two, it'd be clear who was in the wrong. This really wasn't an isolated incident. Emil had hurt people this way before. On top of all that, over the course of the coming days, a few more people would publicly admit that Chugga had made them feel uncomfortable as well. Such as Ms. Fushi, the girlfriend of a well-known YouTuber named AntDude, who was previously friends with Emil. However, the friendship soured after Emil had sent off-putting texts to Ms. Fushi. Beforehand, you could take what happened to Lady Emily as a simple mistake, just two people who failed to communicate properly. All of this tells a different story, though. One of repeated neglect of others' discomfort in order to fulfill some sick, feet fetishized desire. It was easy to write off Emil's actions as a consequence of him being on the spectrum. While it isn't an excuse, it's an explanation. But that explanation doesn't account for pattern. If it truly was a matter of missing social cues, Emil would recognize it after the first time and stop. But he didn't. The only explanation for that would be one of a bit more malicious and sinister intent. However, believe it or not, things get worse.
We lost our childhood innocence to get. Oh god, that sounds really bad.
All right. Show's over.
I have a
We're dead.
boyfriend!
I can hear the sirens now.
Good night, everybody!
On January 25th, just 2 days after MasaeAnela's thread, Worcester, a well-known Pokemon speedrunner, would post this. I'm sharing the story of a close friend of mine to allow her to maintain anonymity. She feels it's relevant to share, given the dynamic started when she was 15 years old, and he was 19. He links a Google Doc explaining things further. The girl's online name was Lolly. Yes, Lolly spelled Lawly. I couldn't make this shit up if I tried. Lolly was a fangirl of Chugga and very into him. She expresses discomfort and regret about what happened between them in these chats. They talked for years and were friends, although they always had a flirtatious vibe when they talked. At first, Emil wouldn't dismiss her flirtations, but he wouldn't indulge in it either. Essentially, think Lady Emily, but the shoes on the other foot. Listen, I gotta keep this lighthearted somehow. Eventually, though, he would start engaging and indulging in it himself. Their chats are the peak of cringy, ooh fetish 2010 roleplay. I'm not going to read these messages because I love myself, believe it or not. The vibes are strange, to say the least. Despite how cringy and weird and sexual these roleplays are, there's a bit of innocence to them. Despite how Lolly feels now, they definitely got along. They would talk to each other about a lot of dark things going on in their actual lives, and having each other to talk to about these depressing topics and make jokes about them seems to have given each other comfort. They both knew an actual relationship wouldn't work for various reasons, but they seem to have enjoyed it while it lasted. Now obviously this doesn't make it okay, but Lolly continued to talk to Emil for years. There's screenshots of them catching up in 2022, and she seems fine with it. It's only up until these other allegations came out that she seemed to fully question what had happened between them. There's definitely more than what meets the eyes. The relationship these two had is wrong, yet complex. It's not as simple as just Chuggaaconroy is a pedo. Nothing ever actually happened between them, but still what Emil did is bad. I can sit here and tell you ways in which all of these conversations Emil had with women are complicated. But it doesn't matter. It would just sound like cope. And to an extent, it really is. All of this put together is just horrible. The internet would not see it that way. People who didn't know Chuggaaconroy, hadn't watched his videos, wouldn't understand his demeanor. They would just see the information laid out in front of them. A history of making women feel uncomfortable. But maybe we never knew Chuggaaconroy. If all this is true, what happened to Emily, Masae, and others, then maybe he wasn't who we thought he was. And this whole pedo stuff really was just the last toenail in the coffin. I'm really trying here. There was no coming back from this. Chuggaaconroy was canceled.
Underground, all the day.
Dude, I am like sexually attracted to the way you go through doors in this game. It's so beautiful.
Whoa! Alright,
It's gonna take a second to process that.
so, anyway.
There it is, the mischievous yo-yo. Yo-yo up, yo-yo orbit, break spin, walk the dog, it's all child's play.
So, Emil was under fire, and people were upset. Not only people on the internet, but TRG fans, acquaintances of Chugga, and his friends. There were a lot of TRG fans who were angry with Emil and were no longer fans, and you also had people on the other end who were still, even after the lolly stuff, supporting Emil. The hashtag #WeAreWithChuggaaconroy started being used by people. There were a lot of people defending Chuggaaconroy still. Probably most notably were Astral Alchemist, and Amber, who actually met the Runaway Guys through Make-A-Wish. It was understandable for people to no longer be fans of Chuggaaconroy or TRG after this, and it was understandable for people to still stick by them and want the best for Emil and everyone else. What isn't understandable is people harassing others online about all of this. As you'd expect with something like this, there were many angry fans arguing with each other and stuff. Neither side of this argument was innocent, they both had their bad apples. I guess I did expect better of the TRG fans, given how great most of the creators in that space are, but every fandom's gotta have its share of bad apples. There were obviously people harassing both Chuggaaconroy, Lady Emily, Masae, and other members of TRG about all of this. It's okay to have and ask questions, just don't be rude or annoying about it. Speaking of those other members, what did they have to say about all this? Well, surprisingly, not much. Throughout nearly this entire drama, very few members of TRG said a word about all of this. If you were just watching their channels and weren't on Twitter or anything else like that, you'd have no idea this was happening. But maybe that's for the best. I'm sure there were messages sent privately between one another, and they all probably agreed the best thing to say was to say nothing. Some, shall we say, TRG acquaintances did speak up though. The most notable ones of these were probably Laughing Boy LP, who had done several interviews with not only Chuggaaconroy, but other members of TRG as well, although because of all this he has since deleted his interviews with Emil, and Slim Kirby, back in the day Let's Player who was good friends with Emil and had appeared in several of his videos. I'm sure there were more people, but those were the main two I could think of, and by the way, it didn't come to his defense or anything. The main people of TRG who needed to talk did talk though. Proton John was who a lot of people turned to for answers in regards to the future and current state of TRG. His response was bleak. Essentially, TRG was being put on an indefinite hiatus and going under a rebrand to the TCU, or Throne Controllers Universe, which was also still planned to be continuing, just without Emil, and honestly, that was the main consensus. They would try to continue things and do videos together with all their friends, but Emil would be absent. It sort of seemed like John was throwing Emil under the bus, but I would argue others had already thrown him under the bus and had been run over by it. At this point, there was simply not much John or anyone else could say or do to help the situation. The best thing to do for the sake of everyone else a part of TRG was to move on and hope the best for Emil. It's definitely not an ideal approach, but think about it from their perspective, like John's. Your longtime friend and professional coworker whom you've had a collab channel with for over the past decade and who is tied to you in so many ways turns out to be a creepy, weird, cringy, foot fetish roleplayer pedo. Or at least that's how the vast majority of the internet saw it. You'd probably be just a little bit peeved about it. The situation is unfair to a lot of people, but man, I really do feel bad for John, as he took the brunt of a lot of this, on top of losing trust and friendship of someone who, while he certainly got annoyed and pissed at from time to time, was very good friends with. However, it seemed like no one had Emil's back. Most people were just disavowing him entirely. Most people except NintendoCapriSun. I brought this guy up earlier, but now it's really time to talk about him. You see, during this time when this whole fiasco was unfolding, Tim was living with Emil and had been for some time. Obviously, this was all quite the shock to Tim, but he stuck close to his dear friend throughout the entirety of this situation. It's through several updates given by Tim that we know what was going on with Emil during all of this. I went into detail about Chuggaaconroy and what he was like as a person before, and how he appeared in his videos. But now it's time for Tim. Tim was always the lax runaway guy. He was kind, honest, chill, and just an overall cool, talented guy. He's the kind of person where you just sort of love to like him. Much like Emil, he would sometimes say some questionable things and had a toilet sense of humor. But like I said before, TRG without him just wouldn't feel right. NintendoCapriSun has been doing Let's Plays for ages now. His Let's Plays aren't as in-depth or as detailed as Chuggaaconroy's, but you've gotta admire the consistency and dedication he's made to this. He's probably most well known for his Plants vs. Zombies series, but he's done a bunch of other things over the years. I've personally never watched him much, except for his known Sunflower run and his Conker's Bad Fur Day Let's Plays. I did watch those too. Now, when this drama first arose, Tim had made a post on Twitter stating that he had no idea about any of this, and that his sympathies go out to the victims. Basically, the usual spiel one would expect. But he also made it clear that he wanted Emil to overcome this. Later, he gave people an update regarding Emil's current situation, and that he had been put in a mental institution for a few days. Mind you, though, he was in there before this lolly stuff came out, and he didn't have access to his phone in there, or anything like that. So Tim had to tell him about this news while he was in the institution. Brutal. Emil's girlfriend was also at his house at this time, and also stuck with him throughout all of this, which is sorta just incredible. I mean, talk about a keeper. After he left the institution he was at, his plan was to head over to Scotland and live with his girlfriend for a while. Just lay low, stay off the internet, and take a break from content creation. When he returned home, he took a few weeks to gather his head and thoughts. Throughout this whole thing, Tim had Emil's back and supported him, which is in stark contrast to how Proton John acted. Some people have criticized John for how he treated Chugga during this, but I really don't think that's a fair thing to do to John. Listen, YouTube, Twitch, Let's Plays, how people perceive these guys and the TRG members online are all aspects that affect their careers and livelihoods. Yes, Emil is John's friend, but he is also his professional co-worker. That he's been doing videos with for well over a decade now, has a big collab channel with, and whether he or anybody else likes it or not, is directly tied to and whose online perception affects him. I'm sure John wished the best for Emil, and while Tim gave him more direct support, John provided Emil with a sort of tough love scenario. Tim lived with Emil and saw it from a friendship perspective, while John didn't, and viewed it in more of a business type of way while still wanting the best for his friend. Someone had to do it. Eventually, Emil sailed off and took his break. Tim continued to live at their house by himself and would give little updates here and there about Emil and how he was doing. It was on a live stream with the previously mentioned Astral Alchemist that he would give some more insight into Chugga, saying that it seemed like he was almost ready to come back to the internet, even stating that he had a few receipts. However, during this long period of silence from Emil, the narrative had been more or less set in stone. Most people had moved on by now and more or less accepted the cancellation of Chuggaaconroy. Some were still waiting for his response, but the online perception of Emil had been tainted and tarnished. Would it really be possible for Emil to redeem himself in the eyes of the internet?
Hello everyone, I am Chuggaaconroy, and I must apologize to Canadians.
Okay.
Fat girl's named Justine.
Give it up for the
What?
From an earlier episode.
Okay. You're distracting me.
Bathrooms on airplanes. People who watched the vlog of Tim recording me having diarrhea.
He deleted that, by the way.
John's friends and ex-girlfriend who were at his dinner listening to me have diarrhea while having dinner.
All right.
Thank you very much. You contestants look ready.
My mother, too, or?
MasaeAnela for probably some bad pun I made somewhere along the line that made her really angry.
Probably some bad pun, he says.
Anybody who has ever watched me make a bad guess at Wheel of Fortune.
Everybody.
And all the people I have deafened. And probably a lot of other stuff, too.
What?
On April 16th, 2024, Chuggaaconroy would post a tweet containing a Google Doc pertaining to all the allegations put against him. He begins it with his iconic,
"Hey everybody, hey everybody, hey everybody, hey everybody, hey everybody, it's Chuggaaconroy!"
and welcome back to my Let's Play of Being Cancelled. This document covers a lot of things and goes into extreme detail about Emil's personal life and past. The first thing he addresses is MasaeAnela. He states that apparently he and Masae had been dating for 10 years and were to be engaged. This wasn't public information at the time. There was some speculation from fans, but it always seemed like really weird. People like trying to ship two real-life people, two individuals, but I guess the shippers were right after all. Only their friends knew about this, which is crazy. For the past decade, Masae and Emil had been together. Every video you saw them in together, they were together. At first, they both wanted things to stay private, but after the engagement, Emil wanted to share it. They had a hard breakup, and Emil states that he got very emotional about it and regrets how he acted. They both now wish to hear nothing from one another and go their separate ways, which is difficult given how much content they're in together and how they're tied through TRG. This definitely changes things. With Masae's statement from before, it seemed that Emil had made her feel uncomfortable with the comments he made towards her. It seemed like fun and games, but maybe it wasn't. However, with this revelation, it becomes far more understandable and reasonable for Emil to have treated her the way he did in videos. The fact that she left such an important piece of information out of her tweets is extremely irresponsible. This dramatically changes the context of their relationship. I can understand wanting to speak out in a situation like this and tell your story, but if you can't tell your entire story, then maybe just don't tell the fucking story. You had to have known how bad this would make Emil look. There are so many videos and vlogs of you two together. This paints him in a horrible light. For me, a lot of Emil's cancellation rode on Masae's credibility. She knew Chugga for a long time and was good friends with him. Lady Emily's allegation seemed out of character for Emil, but for Masae to state that she had similar experiences with him and that this was something she'd expect from him changed my opinion on the situation. I can't imagine how Emil felt after reading this, or just in general, honestly, especially given how well she wasn't okay with publicly sharing her relationship with him. She was perfectly okay with publicly sharing her relationship with her next boyfriend, being Brett Ultimus. There's obviously a difference between the two, but I'm just stating how that's definitely gotta hurt for Emil, even if he's now in a very happy relationship. Next, Emil addresses Lady Emily. Emily contacted Emil through a friend who spelled out to him how she felt. He apologized to not only her, but others he had done similar things with. It all seemed to go over well, and she said things would never go public if he never did it again. Emil sought professional help and started making strides to improve himself. However, it all ended up going public anyway. There's some other things too, like the fact that Lady Emily just sort of lied or over-exaggerated a lot of things. Emil never asked for foot pictures, just a picture of the shoes he bought for her, which was also a birthday present because she said her shoes needed to be replaced. Emil also elaborates on the roleplay stuff, sharing more screenshots, and these screenshots portray a different light, a far sillier one than the one Emily showed. She definitely indulges in the roleplay more than she let on, and this also makes it far more understandable how Emil would think she was fine with it. I mean, come on, this sticker star joke here, that's good. It definitely seems like the tone is a more lighthearted one, and not very sexual or romantic in any way. It's clear that this stuff is a kink for Emil, but that shoes and footwear are just an interest of his, and the roleplay stuff is just for fun, like he said. Emil goes on to talk more about the stuff like his autism and how he doesn't like being ignored, it just makes him worry, but that none of it is an excuse. So yeah, I don't really know what Lady Emily was upset about or why she decided to do all of this and start all of this needless drama, but she did. The last, and probably worst allegation against Emil that he talks about, is the lolly allegations. He begins by talking about how different the internet was in 2010, how it wasn't mainstream or modern. Back then, TRG hadn't started, he hadn't been to any conventions, and was working on his first Pokemon Let's Play. Some things, like the "I'm going to f*** you," was an online internet video of a guy yelling at his cat, or the pedo crush line, which was probably in reference to Pedo Bear. Making fun of those types of things was common online at the time. It would be unfair to judge this with the same moral conscience that the internet has now. At first, Emil thought that Lolly just had a dirty sense of humor, who said dirty jokes and played off of it. However, as things escalated, he began to realize that she wasn't really joking. Lolly sent a sexually explicit gift to Emil's house. After receiving it, his mother consulted him about it and told him this girl liked him. Emil explained the age difference, and they both agreed he should stop talking to her. Lolly had feelings for Emil, not the other way around, and after realizing how she felt about him, did the right thing and slowly cut contact with her. This is how you're supposed to handle these types of situations. Chugga probably should have sensed it sooner, yes, but still. Years later, in 2021, Lolly approached Chuggaaconroy at a convention, and they reconnected over Discord. Emil explained why he cut contact with her, and Lolly's response is chilling, to say the least. Apparently, Lolly's goal was to manipulate Chugga into having sex with her. Yes, she was trying to manipulate him. This reframes the entire picture Lolly was trying to put up. That she was just an innocent little kid who didn't know any better, and how Emil was trying to manipulate her, and she didn't realize it. Emil still feels bad that he made her hurt, he states this, but the logs Lolly showed and what she said were missing very important details and contradict what she said to him in DMs. He does mention, though, that he doesn't blame the person who posted this stuff for her. He was just trying to be a good friend. As for their modern stuff, like Emil said, it had been over a decade since they last conversated, and outside of them seeing each other at a convention, had only talked online. Chugga was speaking purely as adults to do the sexual roleplay stuff since he was single and lonely at the time, plus she had mentioned she missed doing it. His memories of what had happened back then were fuzzy, given that it had been over 10 years. The year he did this stuff was probably the worst year of his life, he says, and he just wanted to feel close to someone he cared about. Throughout each and every single one of these allegations, the people who post them intentionally leave out important information in order to make Emil look bad. Emil is inarguably the victim here. He did do some wrong things, sure, but what these people did now is arguably worse. Emil at least apologizes and does the right thing, but with these people, when he does the right thing, they get upset and try to cancel him for it. However, it somehow gets worse for Emil. I'm gonna try and be brief about all this because, while I find it all important to mention, it's all extremely personal information Emil had to bring up in order to save his reputation and livelihood. If you're not okay with talking about bad mental health stuff like taking a trip down the old rusty sewer slide or assault on children, then skip to this timestamp. Due to a traumatic experience where Emil was assaulted as a child, he was unable to enjoy sex until he was well into his adult life. I'll leave you to interpret what that means more specifically. The idea of sex was just foreign to Emil. He struggled with the general concept of it and things surrounding it. He had to explain all of this to his friends who wanted an explanation of this traumatic experience, trying to train himself to publicly tell every detail, but he couldn't maintain this for long. It was just too difficult and traumatic. I've been paraphrasing a lot of what Emil said in this Google Doc because, for one, it's better to explain than just regurgitate exactly what he said to you, and secondly, you can't copy and paste from this Google Doc, it's disabled, and that's probably for a good reason. But I think there's one paragraph of Emil's I just want to quote, as I feel it perfectly summarizes the situation and what happened to him. It's humiliating even to tell you this much. In order to be believed, I have to tell everyone about my childhood trauma, my sex life, my mental health, my breakup, what went on in therapy, the mental ward, how my accuser wanted to use me for sex, and how I almost died because of this. It's extremely painful to talk about. People think they're owed that from me, and no one will listen if I just say, I didn't mean that, or I was only a teenager. This is the price I've paid to show I wasn't preying on someone. I refuse to call it a win that I could explain myself this way. I didn't win when I went through that. Chuggaaconroy didn't win. Spoiler alert, but this all worked in the eyes of the internet. This was more or less enough to redeem himself, but that doesn't make it a win. This should never have happened in the first place. Everything mentioned in this video had been resolved long before it was brought publicly. And all for what? For justice? Justice for what? Why? Because you felt a little uncomfortable once because of some text messages sent by a dude online that you wanted or you were indulged in? Or because he's your ex and you still hold a grudge? This isn't justice, it's injustice for someone that people should have treated better, should have deserved better. You don't always know what your favorite people online are actually like off screen, but that goes for everyone on the internet. Like I said before, Emil visited the psych ward and he learned a lot about himself. He was diagnosed with several things and hadn't been mentally well for a while actually. He was diagnosed with psychotic depression and a chemical deficiency in his brain. Like I said, he learned a lot about himself and how he handles crisis and trauma. He learned his behavior when crises arrive and what to do about it, and certain social behaviors he does as well that seem normal to him but can be flawed at times. A patient at the psych ward named Destiny also helped Emil, pointing out how he gets stuck in mental loops during a crisis. It seems the visit really helped him a lot. I previously mentioned that 2021 was the worst year of Emil's life. He had gone through several hardships all at once. He was physically cut off from everyone he knew and just lived alone in his house for months. He couldn't get the help he needed because all the mental health industry was overrun due to the pandemic. The only thing he could find was a phone service that sponsored YouTubers that gave him really poor advice and even told him he should leave to make room for people who wished to go down the old sewer slide. It seems Emil still had lasting trauma from 2021 and never really got the help he needed. Even after Chuggaaconroy's 2-month break with his girlfriend, things still weren't great. This whole situation had put a toll not only on Emil, but also his girlfriend. They'd planned a vacation to go on right before all this happened, and Chuggaa's friends were all going to meet her, and they were going to figure out their long-term living situation. However, that of course didn't end up happening. Emil had to go back home, and eventually they would be long distance once again. Emil states he wanted to die during this time. Not like he was gonna do it himself or anything, but just that he wanted the suffering to all end. A very grim thought to have indeed. The timing of all this couldn't have been worse, and he didn't know what to do going forward. Would Let's Playing in his career even be fun or enjoyable anymore? There was so much trauma and baggage attached to it now. Throughout all of this, though, Emil still had Tim and his girlfriend, and even a lot of his other friends. Some were more supportive than others, but still. However, the future looked bleak. The damage had already been done. Even if Emil could repair his reputation, could he repair himself? Like he said, this wasn't a win. Things wouldn't magically go back to normal, and only time would tell what would happen next. So, like I said before, all of that would be enough to redeem Chuggaaconroy, but of course, what would his accusers say now? Did they have a rebuttal, something new to add, or would they realize their mistakes and apologize? Well, let's start with Masae's response, as it's the simplest. She comments on the fact that, yes, her and Emil were engaged and that things were ultimately a mutual decision. She states that her original post was to be done so that she'd be left alone. I can definitely understand that sentiment, but her post does a lot more than that. She didn't have to say all of this to be left alone. Her posts make it seem like her leaving wasn't a mutual decision, which it was, as she states now. Her posts read like she cut contact with Emil and that he was being pushy or petty about it and didn't want her to do this. That, combined with the fact that she doesn't mention they were in a relationship for a decade, makes Emil seem way worse than he is. If you wanted to be left alone, then state that, and if you want to mention that you don't want anything to do with him for personal reasons, then say that too, but mention that it was a mutual one, like you say now. Masae's post just simply reads as irresponsible and petty now with context. However, it seems like they're on, well, not good terms, but the terms they both wish to be on with one another, and don't wish harassment of anyone. Next up is Lolly's response. She bit back with another Google Doc. Of course, I read through this one and it's actually, all right. She basically just explains herself a bit better, and she says that some of the things said in Emil's Google Doc are blatantly false and explains why, but I disagree. Some things he says are a bit untrue, but definitely still have a lot of truth to them. I can see where she's coming from on some of this, just trying to explain herself better, how she felt, why she did some things. And, like, some of the things Emil says about her are over-exaggerated, like them not having contact for 10 years. They've actually talked a bit on Discord long before 2021, but it did seem fairly brief. So yeah, she doesn't try to ruin Emil like she did before, although she claims that that wasn't her goal. But here she just elaborates more, trying to make herself look better. It's kind of whatever, I don't really see much issue with this. I still think her original Google Doc was extremely unfair to Emil, and she shouldn't have posted it, or at the very least been way more clear. I mean, she said some false things as well, so she's just as guilty. I suppose I should bring up Miss Fushi. I mentioned her earlier, if you remember. She never made a huge post about it or anything. It was just interesting, given that she was Ant Dude's girlfriend, and he's a pretty big YouTuber. Like, I've watched some of his stuff before. I'm just gonna let Tim explain this one, as he does a pretty good job in this clip.
Well, first, just let me preface this by saying that this is only what I've heard from him. I can't prove any of this. And also, it's kind of a case where I understand both sides a little bit, so... before COVID, like about, I don't know how long before COVID, Emil and Ant were going to do a collaboration together. they were planning it out and everything, talking about it in Discord, and somehow, I don't know how the subject came up about it, but somehow the subject came up of her, of Fushi, like, coming to hang out with them while they did their collaboration. And then, at some point, Ant told him, well, no, she can't come to hang out with us. And at that point, Emil stopped responding. And the fact that he admitted this to me is kind of telling that it makes me inclined to believe him. So, but like, people stop responding to conversations for all kinds of different reasons, but it's probably Ant took that to mean that, well, if Emil stopped responding, that means he doesn't want to do the collaboration anymore because she can't come. So this led into a series of misunderstandings where they thought that Emil was into her.
Oh no.
COVID came and went, and eventually all three of them were at a convention together. So Emil started messaging Ant about the collaboration, like, hey, can we, you want to maybe get back on this and try it again? But
We can socialize again. Woo.
yeah. But, and again, this is just what Emil told me, that Ant never replied to any of his messages. Until the con was over, at the last second, he replied while they were in the cab to the airport saying, oh, sorry, we're on the way to the airport now. So, what he started doing was messaging her because he knew that she would actually answer her messages. So if he wanted to get in touch with Ant, he would message her. But they thought because he was messaging her and not him, that he was into her. It's kind of confirmation bias, but at the same time, it's kind of understandable why they would think that. So I don't know. So he started going to her streams and watching her a little bit. And I remember because I was sitting in the room for some of them. But I wasn't sitting in the room for this one, but he said that at one of the streams, she started talking about that she was curious about the science behind kinks and fetishes and stuff like that. And so after the stream was over, he sent her a link to a page all about it. But I guess they also interpreted that as him being into her because he sent her a page about fetishes, even though she said she was interested in it on the stream. So then, remember how Kirby passed away?
Yeah.
Like, Kirby was the love of Emil's life,
That devastated me when I heard that.
At one of Fushi's streams, she was raising money for her cat because her cat was sick. And Emil donated to help out with that.
Did she get mad because he donated or something?
Actually, they did. They said he was simping.
Oh. Oh no.
But he was donating because he sympathized with her because he had lost his own cat. The last one was, at some point, me and Emil were talking about moving somewhere. And we had all these different places in mind. North Carolina, New York, Seattle, the UK, Canada. And we were going over all these different possibilities. And at some point, he started talking to a third party who I will not name. It's, you know what, it's Yo Schiller, screw it. And Yo Schiller's not involved in this at all, don't worry. But he was asking him, does he know anybody who lives in any of these areas? And that's when Yo Schiller told him, well, Ant and Fushi live in Seattle, so you could ask them what the living is like there, and maybe, if you were thinking about moving there. So when he asked them, what is it like in Seattle, I was thinking about moving there, they thought he was trying to move there to get with her. So it's like, this is just a series of misunderstandings that happened, and that's why they said that he made them uncomfortable. So, and it's like I still understand their side too a little bit because of how it all started. But
lastly, we have Lady Emily, the one who started all of this. Even before the Google Doc bomb, Emily had made a few posts regarding the situation, how she had been harassed about it. I obviously feel for her. Personal information of hers and her family got doxxed and has no doubt gotten several death threats and anything else you could think of. No one should be harassed like this. It's just mean, cruel, and accomplishes nothing. All it does is make the TRG community and fans look bad, which is a shame because there's tons of great people in the community. I really thought TRG fans were better than this. I'm sure most of them are. It's always the worst of people in a fandom that are the loudest, but, still. Now, that said, I do find it a little hard to sympathize with Lady Emily, given that even after Emil's Google Doc, she never apologizes for her actions. She's honestly the most guilty out of these three, since she's the one who started this whole mess, and yet she points out how she received harassment from people online, and that sucks and is bad, and I agree. But I don't know, maybe take some accountability for what you did. You're not innocent, far from it. Emil apologizes several times throughout his Google Doc, and just throughout the entirety of the situation. But none of these three women ever apologize for what they did to him. for the unjust pain, suffering, trauma, and depression caused by their irresponsible, misguided, and misled actions and allegations. Emil learned a lot from all of this and improved himself because of it, and I hope these three did as well because they're just as guilty as he is. Everyone makes mistakes, but people grow from them and learn from them. That's what people want from these types of situations, right? And Emil did. At every step, ultimately, Emil ended up doing the right thing in the end. He's not perfect and made poor decisions and choices, but he apologized, grew, learned, and moved on from them. Everything in his Google Doc was handled and resolved privately before this. However, some people just want to watch a man burn, I guess. Lady Emily reposted this Google Doc about the previously mentioned Astral Alchemist and some other people in her circle and how they harassed several people, but the Google Doc is fucking 38 pages long. It's a lot of pictures, sure, but man, I don't care about this. There's also stuff against Lady Emily and how she had some people sent out or something. I don't know. I don't care. Neither side is innocent. They're both guilty. Besides, this video isn't about them. It's about Chuggaaconroy and the Runaway Guys. That's what I want to focus on mainly. Speaking of which, it's been a while since this all happened, so how are things going with Emil and TRG today? When I began this video, I foreshadowed a rather depressing ending, but in all actuality, it's a fairly happy one, or at least about as happy as you could hope for. As of writing this in January 2025, Chuggaaconroy recently finished his Let's Play of Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. He returned to YouTube in late July of last year, starting with some random videos and some bonus ones for older LPs that he never got around to doing. He also did a Let's Play of Xenoblade Chronicles Future Connected. It seems Emil ended up finding solace in content creation once again. The Runaway Guys have also made a return recently. Their first Let's Play coming out since all this was one of Super Mario Bros. Wonder with Josh Jepson. I like this as their return. It feels like a soft reboot for them in a sense. New Super Mario Bros. Wii was their second and probably most successful Let's Play they did. It makes sense to start things off with something classic. Although, some people thought this seemed sudden, but Proton John addressed this with some posts on Twitter. I know this may seem like it came out of nowhere, but we have had a lot of long, serious talks about everything. All of us. We are taking things slow and keeping Emil to his word, starting with pre-recorded stuff before anything else. I understand not everyone will agree with it. Trust me, people have voiced their opinions in many different ways to me. But we are watching, we are holding him to his word, and we are trusting him to be honest because in conversations he has shown that to us. I won't hold it against anyone who chooses to not watch. I completely understand that because this isn't black and white to everyone. Just know, it is being taken seriously. There is one last thing I wanted to bring up. This entire debacle has focused on Chuggaaconroy and his interactions with women, but there are plenty of women who are friends with Emil, even outside of TRG, and I think their responses to it are probably some of the most telling as to Chuggaaconroy as a person. The two most notable people are Madame Wario and Tamahiro. These two have been featured in several Chuggaaconroy's videos and vice versa. Madame Wario has played Mario Party with him and appears in his Animal Crossing videos, and Tamahiro made a Bean Boozled video with him, which just seems really random of them to do. After Chuggaaconroy's full response, Madame Wario posted a tweet sticking by and defending Emil. And I swear Tamahiro said something as well, but her Twitter has been locked and she moved to Blue Sky, and you could find posts on there from like when this all started that are clearly in reference to this drama, but I can't find anything talking about it afterwards. However, I swear she posted about it before she locked her Twitter. If anyone can back this up in the comments, please let me know. Regardless, since Emil's full response, she has followed him on Blue Sky, so that's gotta still count for something, right? These two weren't a part of TRG, and so I think their responses to this drama of both defense and shock is very telling and shows what kind of person Chuggaaconroy truly is. He's not a monster, he's not perfect, and certainly not a predator. So yeah, that seems to be the current TRG situation, and things are looking up. Not much has been said on all this since it seems TRG is trying to move forward and past all of this drama and get back to making fun Let's Plays with their friends again. Honestly, if there's anything to take away from this video, it should be to watch members of TRG, even outside of the original three. Probably my personal favorite to watch is Steven and Mal. They make vlogs, Let's Plays, streams, and all the other stuff too. They're just nice and wholesome to watch, and in this day and age, that's kind of in desperate need. Also, I really enjoy the Disc Only podcast. It's a podcast hosted by Proton Jam, Tom Fox, Steven, and the 8-Bit Drummer. It's just a really chill, funny podcast I enjoy. I'd also totally invest in Outback Stab House.
I think I got the worst element of this soundtrack by the four of us. No, actually, maybe Tom did.
I got glaucoma, you jackass!
Speaking of Tom Fox and the 8-Bit Drummer, they're also both great. Just like, honestly, I know this whole video was about the drama surrounding the biggest member of TRG, but that shouldn't discourage you from watching people a part of it. This is seriously like the only major piece of drama they've ever been involved in. I know that I've heavily focused on it, but I don't want Chuggaaconroy to only be remembered as the guy who beat being cancelled. He is a lot more than that, and he means a lot more than that to a lot of people, myself included. He's far from perfect and has made numerous mistakes and poor decisions in the past, but he's trying to overcome them and has apologized for them. And isn't that all you can really ask of someone? He's inspired many and has made a lasting impact on the internet and people, and TRG and the people involved in it have done the same as well. I could go on, but you get the picture. I like Chuggaaconroy and TRG. Chuggaaconroy and TRG are cool, and you should watch them. Or not, I don't really care, it's a free country. And if any members of TRG are watching this, hi. There's really only one other big video talking about this subject I could find. It's done by this guy named Short Fat Otaku. The video is pretty good, all things considered. It actually reads out some of the cringy messages sent by Emil and goes over some things I didn't mention. I also didn't watch the whole video, but like I said, it seems pretty good. However, the video focuses a lot more on the cancel culture / political side of things, and that's fine. I have no issue with it, and this topic does a pretty good job at proving Otaku's point, but the guy's not a Chuggaaconroy or TRG fan. He did his research for the video, of course, but it's not like he's been a long-time watcher or anything. I, on the other hand, am and have been a fan of Chuggaaconroy and TRG since I was a kid. I just wanted to make a video about Chuggaaconroy, TRG, and the drama, because I didn't want the only video covering it to be one that's pretty political. There's nothing wrong with it, I just wanted to focus more on Chuggaaconroy as a creator rather than as some sort of pseudo-martyr. So yeah, that pretty much covers everything I wanted to say. Moral of the story is, don't make people feel uncomfortable by doing feet fetish roleplay, don't bring up unnecessary drama that was resolved months ago, don't tell a story if you can't tell the full story, and don't lie about things in the past. Also subscribe, like, and comment. I think I'm supposed to say those things. Figured I'd add all that on as one last little footnote. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.